Today we are so lucky that we have the chief economist of Handelsbanken Kari Due-Andresen with us. Kari has previously worked on monetary policy at the Bank of Norway, so she's perfectly positioned to have an opinion on the subject. This weekend she announced that she's hodling Bitcoin. That was a simple, small tweet that got 7,000 likes so far, which is about twice as many likes as the Prime Minister of Norway got for her birthday. So there's no doubt that this subject is causing a lot of enthusiasm on crypto Twitter in Norway. And without further ado, I'm really happy to say good morning to you, Kari.
A very good morning to you too.
Has it been a different weekend?
It's been a little surreal, I have to say. I normally get like 10 likes on what I tweet because I mostly tweet macro stuff, and but this one went viral, I guess.
You struck a nerve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of interest out there.
Congratulations on your first Bitcoin. What does that
Thank
feel
you.
like?
It feels good. I've been curious about it for some time, and I thought it was a good time to buy, and I just want to, come along and see how it evolves, really.
Would you have imagined this 4 years ago, investing in Bitcoin, or is this something that has changed?
I mean, 4 years ago, I wasn't really aware of Bitcoin at all. I started paying attention, I guess, about a year ago, mostly because I'm interested in central banks and monetary policy and digital central bank currencies. And then I became more aware of the crypto space, and I started to read up on that. So yeah.
Was there a particular event that triggered that sort of change of interest?
I saw on Bloomberg that the Bank of Japan issued something that I thought looked like a Mayday statement, because the Central Bank of China was about to issue a digital currency. And I wanted to know a little bit more about what that was all about. And then that really just brought me into this world.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up an interesting question, because I mean, that means that your entry into this came from this seeing that, okay, you have some countries that are coming out with CBDCs and you have other countries that are going to have to respond to this. Does that mean that when you went into Bitcoin, is it an investment? Is it a curiosity project? How would you think about it in your own portfolio?
I guess it's mostly out of curiosity, but since I bought it, I'm hoping it will go up.
Okay.
No, it's mostly because I'm curious. I want to follow it. I have maybe a little skin in the game, if you will.
Yeah.
And just learn more about this whole space, which I think is very, very interesting.
That's good. That's great. What would you say, because you come from the world of legacy finance, and obviously Handelsbanken and a lot of other banks in Norway have, on the last couple of years, in various ways responded to crypto, and not always equally positively. Do you think there is a change in how legacy finance views crypto?
I don't know. There seems to be a change internationally, maybe not so much in Norway. What the central bank has done is just warn people that it could be dangerous to invest in crypto because it's so volatile. But that means that when the central bank comes out and says something like that, it's because the interest for crypto is indeed increasing also in Norway. Among analysts, I think it's been quite popular to bash Bitcoin in the previous years. But if you listen now to what they're saying, that the tune has maybe become slightly different, and I think the most negative people, they've become a little more quiet, and I think people have been forced to pay attention, and maybe we will see like a very gradual change, I would guess, in a direction where at least more people pay attention to this phenomenon.
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a sport to bash Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What do you think is the thing that most people in legacy finance have gotten wrong? What is the thing that people miss?
I don't think they believed in their wildest imagination that it would become so big. And just over the past year, I guess the interest internationally has also grown exponentially with professional investors also entering into this crypto space, and institutional investors even. And you have more and more institutions actually taking an interest in Bitcoin and in crypto. And so I think that will come to Norway as well. And when the central bank in Norway now is looking into if it can have a central bank digital currency in the future, it is partly because private payment solutions and crypto is growing and could be a threat to the central bank and the monetary policy and monetary policy's traction in Norway. And I find that very, very interesting.
Do you think that's the most important thing for legacy finance in Norway has been the involvement of institutional investors like Paul Tudor Jones and Michael Saylor, or do you think that the interest from central banks like Bank of Japan and obviously now the Fed and the European Central Bank, which one do you think is most important to gain legitimacy and interest?
I mean, for the Bank of Japan, when they issued their when I saw the Mayday sentence on Bloomberg, as I call it, I think that was mainly because they're afraid that the Chinese coin might be disruptive to the traditional market. I don't know how much we have to fear that, because the dollar dominance is quite strong. But I think that now at this point it's more than 80% of central banks globally that are looking into digital cash. So I think we will have it at some point. In Norway, it's a few years off, but I think it's definitely coming, because the alternative is to regulate away the problem, if you will. And I just hope that's not the direction we're heading in, because I think that would be taking a huge step back.
Yeah, so that's sort of, and add to it if you want, but that sort of answers my question of how do you think central banks should respond to...
Yeah, because what they're afraid of is if these private payment solutions are taking it too big of a chunk of the market, then the monetary policy that they use to try to steer the Norwegian economy loses traction, and they can't really allow that. So they need somehow to take back that market, or to cooperate with that market, so that they can influence it and make sure that the monetary policy has an effect the way it should. So I hope that if they go for a central bank currency, they can be a player in this digital space, instead of just trying to curb it.
I mean, I saw your talk yesterday with the guys in Bitcoin Snack. We have a podcast here in Kongeriket, Bitcoin Snack, and you also elaborate a bit more about your thinking behind all of this. And you came into the subject of inflation, and your views on sort of existing currencies. And I guess that's where I got the strongest feeling that while you're one of us, there is still some distance to go in the mindset of how we think about this thing. Because from our perspective, we have this growth by inflation, which has run into deep trouble because of the deflationary effects of technology. Things are getting cheaper while the central bank is trying to make it more expensive to keep it stable. And that has worked well in terms of generating welfare and growth in GDP, but it has also generated enormous inequality. It has generated fairly large misallocation of capital into projects that may or may not be productive. And of course, it's caused mountains of collectivized debt. So under those circumstances, what do you think? How strong do you think the central bank's ability to even compete with Bitcoin, being hampered by all those flaws, and does it need to solve those before it can compete? What are your thoughts?
Well, after we got these inflation targets, you have actually had more stability introduced into the national economies, because in the 70s, for instance, you had hyperinflation. And that's one reason why you want to control inflation, That's with a purpose for stability in the macroeconomy. If you have, I mean, in theory, it would be the best thing to have zero inflation, but you can't really achieve that. You're not able to control it so perfectly. So therefore, the central banks aim for just a little bit of positive inflation, because then you have kind of a margin where you can steer around. If you have zero, that's your benchmark, then you easily can fall into negative price growth, and that's what you don't want. Because if you have deflation, if everything becomes cheaper tomorrow, then people will wait until tomorrow to buy stuff or to invest. And
that's a theory. That's a theory, but I mean, history doesn't really bear that out. I mean, in the 19th century, perhaps the greatest period of growth in human history, we had deflationary currencies, and it's really only since 1971 that we institutionalized inflationary growth. That's an extreme monetary experiment, and humanity grew quite nicely until 1971 too.
That's at least the theory behind it, that if you know that something that you want will become much cheaper next week, it's like Bitcoin, if you will.
Yeah.
If you know that it's going to be cheaper next week, you can as well wait and buy it next week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're much more cautious about what you spend on.
Absolutely.
You have greater reasons to put into savings.
Yeah. So that's the thinking, that you want some positive inflation because you want the world to move forward. And then they try to steer it around a low percentage. Most central banks have chosen 2%. And that's, so as long as they can keep inflation expectations anchored around 2%, when people that set prices think that it will be a 2% increase roughly ahead, they will also adhere to that. And that introduces some kind of stability into the system. And that's specifically what the central banks want. They don't want too much volatility in the labor market, say, or in production. It's better to have a smooth trend if you can. So that's the thinking and the reasoning behind inflation. And the reason why central banks are so adamant to push liquidity and money into the system is that they're afraid that if growth becomes too weak, then inflation expectations among people might slip, and then they don't have that anchor anymore for monetary policy, and then it doesn't work properly. So that's why. And you say that monetary policy has brought so much inequality. Yeah, I guess because it inflates asset prices. It's no question
if you're
about
rich.
it. But you also could say, and the Fed has shown this in research articles after the financial crisis, is that it also helps unemployment go down. And that's the best thing you could try to do as a central bank, is to reduce unemployment, because that helps ordinary people, not just investors.
But I mean, as Hayek said, if every worker was staffed in the army and fleet, we would have full employment and nothing to eat. And so having a centralized authority with the goal of creating full employment may not be the right mandate. But that's the mandate for the moment. I know you have to run, so I just want to squeeze in a last question, unless you want to answer something on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think a central bank in the future might have Bitcoin in their reserves?
I seriously doubt it. Because I doubt it. That's all I can say. I think that then Bitcoin would have to become more like gold, and but central banks aren't even holding that much gold anymore. So I really don't think so. What I do think is that Bitcoin will grow further, and I think that it's become a trend now that's much stronger than what it used to be, and that's why I wanted also to come along. And you see that the central banks are really paying attention. That's partly why they're looking into bringing their own digital currencies. So this is very exciting, and I'm happy to be part of it now.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you along for the journey as well. I think everyone in this space is learning every day. It is such a fast-changing field. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for coming along, and I wish you a very, very good week.
You too. Thank you.